Hello everybody. I am so glad to be talking to you guys again. It's been a while since I've made a YouTube video, and over the past month we've accumulated 75 of us who are, for whatever reason, interested in my journey of getting a piece of fiction out of my mind into this typewriter and then hopefully to a publisher at some point. I have noticed that there's basically a split crowd of the two of you guys. Basically, half of you seem to be more interested in typewriters and the other half more in writing. So today's going to be one of those typewriter videos. However, if you're a writer, stay tuned, kind of look at this, see what a typewriter has to offer, and if you already haven't, check out my second vlog, which focused on how one of these beautiful machines can actually help your writing process by eliminating distractions and forcing you to push forward, and lots of other wonderful traits. So what I would like to do today, it's a little different. You can see my face is not in the video. I think the videos look even better that way when we just get to look at a typewriter. And I have a beautiful Smith Corona Skyriter here on my desk. Those of you who have been following my videos might be wondering, where is that red typewriter? Oh God, what did you do with that red typewriter? Because I had a Smith Corona Sterling from the 1950s with a beautiful curvy body, and that was set up in a beautiful red spray paint. Well, here's the thing, a lot of you loved it, but I am an OCD person. So the smallest mark, like this tiny one over here that we'll take a look in a second, drives me insane. So my paint jobs were just nowhere near the level of expertise that I wanted from a machine. So that being said, I said, well, I want a machine that's more akin to the time it came out. And I also have been looking for a super portable, what you might call the laptop of typewriters. And it came down between two beautiful machines that I've always wanted. One was the Smith Corona Skyriter that you see here, and the other was the Hermes Rocket / Baby, depending on where you find it, under what name. And I went with this beautiful Smith Corona because I just love the feeling of these Smith Corona keys and this floating, actually I'm sorry, this is not floating shift, this is carriage shift. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So this is a retro review, essentially, a super retro review of the Smith Corona Skyriter typewriter. So if you're interested in one of these units, stay tuned. I'm going to talk about what makes it amazing, what I love about it, some of the slight drawbacks, and some of the things to maybe check out when you're purchasing one of these machines, or things that you should know or look after. So in terms of this machine, the colors are not fabulous. They came in the 1950s and kind of that era where they were kind of drab. So the one I have right now is kind of like this, if you want to be all fancy, we might call it smoky gray. But really it's just like this gray dull color with like a cream colored keys logo and little adornments such as on the carriage knobs here. So not the most beautiful typewriter in the world. It's not going to win any awards. But I like it. It's nice. There's also one that comes in green, in like it's got like green racing stripes. So that one might be a little bit more flary. I can also paint this at some point, and if I decide to paint it, I'm not going to paint it. I'm going to have someone else paint it. You can bring it to like a local mechanic or auto body shop, and sometimes they're willing to work with you to paint your weird curiosity of a machine when you walk into their car shop with a typewriter. But that's one option there. But just in case you're wondering, no, I did not get rid of my Smith Corona Sterling just because I didn't like the red color. I love the red color, but I didn't get rid of it because of the imperfections either. I got rid of it because I wanted something that was more portable, and I was looking for my final machine. I've gone through a lot of different machines in my writing process, trying to find something perfect. I started with just looking for the looks. And I picked up a Remington Royal Model 5 and discovered I didn't really like the super heavy carriage shift and it being super noisy. So that's when I moved on to Smith Corona Sterling, that beautiful large machine. One of the best typewriters I've ever used. To this day, it's still amazing. I'd love to pick another one up in maybe more period color and still keep it somewhere just in case. And then here's my crowning beauty. Essentially, to me at least, a Smith Corona, just everything wonderful about a Smith Corona shoved into this really tiny body that's super lightweight. I mean, I can lift it with one hand. It's heavy, but I can do it. And it fits into this wonderful bag that I'll also show you in a moment. So let's talk about this Smith Corona typewriter. How does it type? How does it feel? What are the downsides? Well, let's start with the obvious, the size. It is super tiny. It is super small. This is not a thick typewriter by any means. I would show you it next to my phone, but my phone is recording right now, so I cannot. Here's a bottle of Coca-Cola. I am not sponsored by Coca-Cola. You turn it sideways, it's about the size of the typewriter height-wise. So it's not a big boy. It's a very tiny, flat machine, and it's a little odd at first when you're used to having a larger machine. The fact that some of the keys here, I don't know if you can tell, but some of the keys are almost at level with the top here, and that can be a bit odd if you're not used to that. But overall, despite the small size, it types great. We have the QWERTY keyboard layout in this American style unit. This one's from the late 1950s. I believe 57 or 58 was probably the manufacturing year of this model. Of this particular machine based on the serial number. We have the wonderful keyboard layout. If you've never used a typewriter keyboard layout before, there might be some unfamiliar signs and symbols and missing, let's call them characters. Up in the upper left, we have the margin release. So if we move past those margins, we can click that button down and it will let us continue writing past the margins. We have the number keys up top. Notice the one is missing. Like a lot of old typewriters of this time period, we use a lowercase l as the number 1. So it goes L, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. We have the beautiful keyboard here. Shift and Shift Lock. Shift Lock is located on this left-hand side here. Beautiful space bar, nice and long. Good click. It's not shallow or anything like that, so it's wonderful. We have a backspace key up here. It's very interesting though that the arrow is actually pointing to the right. I'm used to backspace pointing to the left, but this is our backspace key up here. And then we have some other keys that have kind of lost their handiness in time, such as the quarter and half fraction key and stuff like that. We do have the apostrophe above the 8 key, which some people have a bother with if they're writing novels or dialogue, that can bother them just because they have to constantly shift to hit the apostrophe or shift over 2 over here to hit the quotation mark. For me, not a big deal. Now, typically, I do not like carriage shift. So if you're not aware of what carriage shift is, it's that when we press this shift key or this shift key here, watch what happens to the carriage. The whole carriage moves up and down. That's how the different top and bottom slugs hit. So when we shift, the carriage shifts and the type bars hit a different angle, producing whatever that shifted key is, whether it's a capital, a letter, or it is a symbol above one of the number signs, or so on. However, very different with this machine. It is super light. This carriage is so tiny and small that it's almost insignificant. I wouldn't say it's as light as a nice basket shift or floating shift where the segment here moves up and down. That's always very light. But I would say it's super close. I would say that if you're someone who doesn't like carriage shift, I don't think this would be an issue here. It's so light and small. It's so light and tiny. And I have not had a personal issue with it at all. The keyboard feels great. It feels like a Smith Corona keyboard. And it feels wonderful under your fingers. It feels just like moving from working, it feels like just like working on my Smith Corona Sterling. Let's pop open the hood here. Okay, nice soft hood, nice soft little pop. Again, there we go. We have the miniature spools, so the smaller spools we find on a lot of portables. So just keep that in mind, you're gonna need a set of those smaller spools. Typically I have these two that came with the machine, and if I need new ribbon, the ribbon will come in on the larger spools, and then I will spool them onto the smaller spools. That is really not an issue though. On the left-hand side here, right over here, right in this area, there is the touch selection, so how springy and how responsive you want the keys back. I have it on about a 4. I kind of like a medium touch to them. The low setting would give you a very light and airy key, and the H would give you a very heavy key. So you can explore that on your own to see what's your preference. Underneath all the type bars, we have the nice felt still here. It has not gone. It has not disappeared. Oop. It has not gone. It has not disappeared. It is still there and ready. So we're going to close this lid. You can see the felt here is still here. It has actually stood the test of time very well. I don't know if it was serviced at some point, but it might as well been, just because everything is in such great condition. I'm going to go ahead and close up this lid. Got that Smith Corona logo. You can feel it. It's got a nice texture popping out. Overall, though, that keyboard is very comfortable to type on. It doesn't feel like you're typing on a miniature typewriter. It doesn't feel like you're typing on a typewriter that is, you know, losing features or losing its comfortability just because of the size. This is a real serious keyboard. It has that Smith Corona feel, and you shouldn't be afraid of looking at this typewriter and being concerned that this is going to feel cheap or just not great. Let's spin it around. We'll take a look at the carriage. So actually, before we look at the carriage, we'll show you on the back. We have the Smith Corona logo, very beautiful. And then I'm going to kind of move it in a bit. Okay, we have the Skyriter logo here. This piece often falls off of these machines. It's not put on very well. So that's just something to note when you're purchasing one. This actually fell off, but it was still in the bag. So I was able to use basically like a solution on the back, sort of like a glue or a putty to keep it affixed to where it should be. And with a flick, we get those beautiful Smith Corona, I don't know, we'll call them rabbit ears. So rabbit ears to hold up our paper. So some of the things I just want to mention right off the bat you should know, since this is a portable. Let's take a look at the segment over here and the vibrator. So what we have to know is that this can actually not shift between different colors. That's something very important to understand, especially if you're someone who types in 2 colors or you'd like 2 color ribbons. That is not an option with this Smith Corona. This Smith Corona can only type in 1 color. So what you will have to do is, once you've used up the top row, which it will always type on the top row, you will flip the spools in a sense, or flip the ribbon in a sense, to then access the bottom portion of the ribbon for writing. But there is no selection between upper and lower. As a writer and someone who's not really creating content that requires magnificent colors, it doesn't bother me, but it might bother you. Speaking of the ribbon, we have the ribbon selector here, or sorry, ribbon reverse here. We don't have a selector, no. So this is ribbon reverse. We'll change the direction the ribbon goes once it reaches the end, but there is an automatic detection. Just in case your ribbons don't have eyelets or anything to signify it, and you haven't tied them or anything like that, you can manually make that decision with that key here. So let's talk about this. This is a tiny, tiny platen. The one I have is quite hard, but has a little bit of rubber left to it. So it's perfect for my writing. It's nice and grippy, the model that I have right now, so I am leaving it as is. You'll see we have these really, really tiny carriage knobs here. I was kind of concerned because how small they were. I was used to them on my Sterling where they're like twice the size, but they're actually really easy to access, not much of a concern. They feel stable. This is a well-built machine. It's not something I am concerned about. Carriage release is only located on the right. Sometimes you have it on the right and left on most machines, but here it is only on the right. Again, not a big issue for me. Generally, when we use carriage release, we want to move the carriage maybe to the left, or even if not, it's not a big deal. It's right there. If that's something that bothers you, though, it's worth noting. In addition to the carriage release on this side, we also have the paper release, so we can just release the pressure and pull the paper out. Now, this is something that is very important to me, this paper baler, because I like paper balers. I do not like paper fingers. The paper baler on this one is quite nice. It's got a little spring on the right-hand side. That's what gives it that snap. Very nice. And there's a ruler across it to make it really nice and clear where you are currently when typing on the page. The only thing I would love on this is on this Sterling, there's a little switch you pull forward, so it will pop up and then come forward a bit. That makes it really easy for the paper to slide right under. With this one, you don't have that, so you do kind of have to do this motion where you put in the paper, you lift the baler, and you kind of push the paper under and lower the baler. Not a big deal, but it is something to think about. That is, you know, a feature of this typewriter. We do have the margins along the back. We have our right margin and our left margin, which we can move back and forth. and then we switch to the more complicated side. By complicated, I just mean there's more stuff going on here. So again, we have the carriage knob right here. We have that carriage knob right there. We have a tiny lever here for, I want to say centering. I'm going to be honest, I haven't used this in a bit. Give me 1 second. I actually haven't used that lever. Let's learn it together. Yep, that's what it is. Back to this side. I made it very important for me in my personal buying decision to purchase the Skyriter model with the long handle, the long carriage return. On a lot of machines, it is just a very short bit. So the later models introduced this longer lever, and that's something I looked for on the model I purchased. The two more things to point out really quickly. Under here, I don't know if you can see in here where my finger is, I'm going to try and focus on that a little bit better. There's this little switch here, and this is actually what controls, see the little switch? That controls if we move by 1 or 2 lines when using the carriage return. It's kind of an odd system because you really got to dig your finger in there to move it, so it's kind of in an odd spot. I don't personally switch between that option a lot, but if you are, you might find that slightly annoying. And that's about it, guys. This is the Smith Corona Skyriter. It is a typewriter I personally love. Oh, sorry, one last thing before I forget. Right up here, I don't know how well we can see this. I'm gonna try and do this as well as I can on the camera, guys. But we have that end of page marker. So this allows you to see when the page is coming to an end. I find that super important, and I can't work on a typewriter without him anymore because it is such a practical and important feature. So guys, that's all. I just wanted to share the Smith Corona Skyriter with you. Overall, I think it's an excellent unit. It feels like a grown-up Smith Corona, just in a small body. It's great for travel. It's absolutely wonderful. And if you're looking for a portable typewriter, the Smith Corona Skyriter is definitely a great option. And like I said, it does come in a few different colors. Really quickly, before my camera dies, gonna scroll this out of the way. This is the bag that it came with for me. So this is a leather bag, beautiful leather. I've got this in really nice condition. Gonna open this for you. And you can see the typewriter sits right in here. Here's a typewriter brush that came with it, along with actually some of the original typewriter materials, which is really nice. But that just sits right there, and you can close it, and you're on the go. Guys, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe. We're going to be taking a look at some other typewriter features, other writers, tools, and instruments that could come in handy, as well as the entire writing process. As usual, a quick update on my own personal writing. It's going quite well. I've just finished chapter 13 of my own personal book, and I'm very excited as I will next be transferring it to the computer, and basically I'm looking at about being halfway done with the book almost by now. So hopefully by the next time I get the next video out, I will be halfway done with my personal journey. And that's it. If you have any questions about the Skyriter, please feel free to post in the comments below. If you want to see something or talk about something specific, please let me know, because I love typewriters. I love talking about these. They are my writing instrument of choice. Maybe you're someone who prefers a nice pen and paper instead. Some people like that much better. Let me know what you prefer when you write. Do you like the typewriter? Do you like a computer? Do you use both in your workflow like I do? Be sure to check out my previous videos. Be sure to subscribe and join me on this writing adventure. Guys, I will see you next week, and thanks for checking everything out. Talk soon. Bye.